up, we have the College of Arts and Humanities, who will present on module design and enhancement through a UDL lens. Our faculty partners from the College of Arts and Humanities are Associate Professor Naomi McAreavey, Dr. Annette Clancy, Dr. Fionnuala Walsh, and Dr. Mary Farrelly.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm from the School of English, Drama and Film. When I started the Faculty Partnership Programme this time last year, 11 Arts and Humanities colleagues had been awarded the UDL badge, including me. As faculty partners, we were responsible for promoting and then facilitating the badge locally, and this allowed us to tailor the message for Arts and Humanities. By the end of the autumn trimester, the number of badge awardees from our college had more than doubled to 24, and another 23 colleagues were awarded their badge in our first local rollout this trimester. A significant proportion of new badge holders are hourly paid tutors, and funding allowed me to recognise their work with book tokens. The course was a pleasure to facilitate. The comprehensive facilitator pack made my job easy. And I learned so much from my colleagues. There is such a range of redesign projects undertaken during the local rollout. One of my favourites was done by my colleague Eddie Coleman in history, who created crosswords to help his students understand key terms for his module. 100% of course participants said they would definitely integrate UDL in their teaching in future. One person said it's something you can't unlearn and will forevermore shape their practice. The course has influenced my own work in many ways, but in these few minutes, I will focus on rubrics and templates. Simply, a rubric is a tool that includes descriptions of levels of performance to facilitate grading and feedback, and a template gives students a structure for arranging and presenting their learning in an assignment. Together, they help empower students by making expectations clear and providing guidance at all stages of the assessment project. So in this slide is an analytic rubric for a group project, which was an illustrated glossary. An analytic rubric breaks down the assignment into specific criteria. I do not assign points to each criteria, which means that the rubric doesn't automatically generate a grade. I think this would be inappropriate for complex assignments like the ones I set, but rather provides a guide for the assessor. The level descriptors for each criteria offer generic feedback to students, but in Brightspace you can also add personalised feedback against each criteria. Rubrics have really helped to support the grading and feedback process for students and for assessors alike. And here on this slide is a template for another group project, this time an online exhibition of primary sources, which I developed when it became clear that my students were unsure of what was expected from this assignment, even though I thought, given clear guidelines with samples of previous work. So I wanted to produce a template that provided comprehensive guidelines while remaining flexible and adaptable. I was worried that my template would stifle creativity, but actually it gives students the space to be more imaginative once they had the basics covered. The template helped improve the overall standard of the projects. So rubrics have helped clarify my expectations and ensure the validity of the assignment. They have supported my module team in grading more consistently, reliably and efficiently. They have become an effective tool to help new tutors develop their assessment practice, and they have assisted students in understanding how they are assessed and how to improve their performance. Templates have helped me clarify the goals of an assignment and ensure that expectations are reasonable. They have equipped my module team with the information they need to advise and support their own students. They have helped tutors understand and articulate the goals of an assignment, and they have allayed student fears when encountering an unfamiliar form of assessment. So my experience with templates and rubrics reminds me of what I and other badge awardees learned during the UDL course, that small interventions can make a real difference. This is why I think the Faculty Partnership Programme is so important. By providing a structure to increase participation in the UDL badge, we can maximise the number of colleagues trained in UDL. And once they learn about UDL, they can't but practice it because it's a threshold concept that fundamentally changes our approach to teaching, learning and assessment. So the more we get our students to understand and practice UDL, the more inclusive our programmes will ultimately become. Okay.
Thanks, Naomi. I'm Annette from the School of Art History and Cultural Policy. Joining the Faculty Partnership Programme this year has afforded me the opportunity to further develop ideas I gained from doing the digital badge last year. In the context of a new degree our school is launching in September, an undergraduate degree in creative and cultural industries, for which I'm developing a new module entitled Introducing Management. My teaching philosophy is that students are already creative practitioners. My role is to structure a learning environment in which that creativity can be expressed, amplified, and harnessed for learning. Beyond the basic principles of UDL, which will be embedded in the modules, such as course materials presented in multiple formats and choice of assessments, I wanted to do more to encourage student engagement. My students will enter a work environment in which they may have a traditional job, but they'll also be more likely to have portfolio careers, to be self-employed, to work across many different sectors, start their own businesses, and to encounter the gig economy. My role then will be to prepare them to manage themselves as much as to teach them about management. The creative sector often works in familiar cycles. In theatre, for example, it might be a 4 to 6 week rehearsal period followed by a 4-week run. Opening night is, well, opening night, and there aren't going to be any extensions. The rhythm has similarities to students' schedules, with opening night replaced by a less exciting, perhaps, date of assignment deadlines. Managing this kind of schedule and workload is an essential skill for a creative manager, which is why I want my students to learn these skills directly from artists and managers and to then apply them to their own workloads and schedules in their first trimester. Students will work with arts managers to apply the same techniques they use in an arts context to their own workload during the autumn trimester. One assignment will be to focus on designing a tool or a process or modifying an existing tool to manage their own workload. There are, of course, many existing tools I could teach students, but my point here is to have arts practitioners and students working together so that students see management as a process that connects them to the world of work. Students will be invited to present their finished research to the class in any medium they choose. Transferring real-world skills from the creative sector to the classroom and back again to the creative sector will be a key aspect of learning for students as they begin to think about management as a personal skill, as a skill set they can apply to the management module, as a competency that's useful for their programme, and ultimately a capability they can take into their careers. Supporting this and the other modules my colleagues are developing will be a regular industry group mentoring session. We'll draw on our MA in Cultural Policy and Arts Management graduates who facilitate these sessions in which students will be supported and guided to apply learning and practice, deepening engagement, and helping students to establish their first professional networks. These resources made available to me, the resources made available to me as a faculty partner, for which I am most grateful, mean that I can also create resources that will outlive this first iteration of the module and can be made available to other faculty to use in their programs. Students will be invited to create short recorded presentations on their tool for peer distribution. In addition, I'll create video resources with invited artists, managers and graduates on self-management topics of relevance to Stage 1 students, which can be shared beyond next autumn's delivery of this module. Thank you for listening. I'd like now to, we'll have now a short video from my colleague, Dr. Mary Farrelly, who can't be with us in the room today.
Hello, I'm Mary Farrelly and I'm a lecturer in Spanish Studies at the UCD School of Languages, Cultures and Linguistics. I can't be with you today, but I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on UDL and the inclusive plurilingual classroom. Like Fionnuala and Annette, I've been a faculty partner since last November. I've also been involved in the University Wiping Participation Committee, and last summer I was involved in the Brightspace Ally Early Adopters community. Since then, I've completely fallen in love with Brightspace Ally, a software that can help us scan resources in Brightspace for common accessibility issues and provide feedback to help faculty gauge the overall accessibility of their materials and improve the overall experience for students. However, working with Brightspace Ally to improve accessibility across my own language and culture modules has drawn my attention to a number of challenges for language learners that assistive technology often overlooks when it assumes a monolingual classroom. So what are these main challenges? Basically, even tools and software designed to support inclusive learning often have the unintended consequence of limiting and excluding bilingual students, heritage speakers of languages other than English, speakers of minority or marginalised languages and dialects, and even students with accents perceived to be non-standard. Documents using more than one language or colloquial terms are often spell-checked into the wrong language, making them incomprehensible. Some VLEs, and I'm thinking of Moodle, reject characters, accents, and punctuation from languages other than English, even in students' names. The captions function on Zoom, while so useful to many students, cannot handle the multiplicity of languages, dialects, and accents used in plurilingual classes, producing garbled nonsense that is of no use to anyone. This is one of my favourite examples, a transcript of a conversation between students in my historical memory and Spanish narrative class, where we were using a mixture of English and Spanish phrases. A very intelligent conversation about memory cultures came out as a suit protagonist has como signal sex, a lot of fantasy of masculinity, pseudo-feminist for oppressed dyspraxia and sacrificial. Even really useful interventions like captioning and subtitling can undermine language learning by promoting a logic of false equivalences and moving the classroom towards monolingualism. So how can we best respond to these challenges? These problems are huge and come up in so many different aspects of our lives. There's not much that any one individual can do to tackle these problems. However, the +1 philosophy of UDL allows us to break big problems down into small, tiny, achievable, tickable tasks. And even acknowledging that these problems exist is a huge step forward. My first small step towards making a more inclusive plurilingual classroom has been exploring my options with H5P software. I am using the software in my Modern Spanish Theatre module to make interactive videos that will help students engage with primary texts in the target language without becoming overly dependent on subtitles in English. It is my hope that these small actions will go some way towards addressing the bigger challenges that I addressed earlier in this video. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Fionnuala and I'm from the School of History, and I'm going to talk about taking a UDL approach to teaching inspired by my role as faculty partner in the School of History. A core part of my teaching in the School of History has been the Making History module, which is part of the Access Diploma for Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences and Law. This course aims to prepare students to enter undergraduate degrees. The Access Diploma students are a diverse cohort of non-traditional learners. There's a greater mix of ages, nationalities and socioeconomic backgrounds than what we might think might be typical in an undergraduate class, and there's a higher than average proportion of students with a registered disability or for whom English is not their first language. Many of the students had a prior negative experience of education or were several decades removed from it. Many are juggling work and caring responsibilities alongside their studies, and in a sense, they serve as a reminder of the changing profile of what we might consider a typical or traditional UCD student. And the image here is of special collections in UCD. One of the tasks we do with students is to bring them to view primary source artefacts. My experience of teaching on this course has led to a greater interest and awareness of the value of a UDL approach. Last semester, I completed the digital badge. This made a significant difference to my understanding of universal design, and it gave me lots of ideas for redesigning my module at undergraduate and MA stage, as well as the Access course. And one thing I want to emphasise is that the changes I'm making here are not just for this Access student cohort, but apply to all of our students across the university. I've also undertaken a course in inclusive teaching practices organised by Advanced HE, funded through the Faculty Partnership Programme. One of the most important principles I took from all of this was the focus on changing the design of the environment and not just targeting students with specific disabilities, but creating accessible, inclusive spaces that support all students to become expert learners. Flexibility in methods of teaching and learning are at the heart of it, and designing courses that are meaningful, relevant, and accessible to all. My efforts to create a sense of belonging and to improve class engagement included group work, discussion forums, but also a section on Brightspace with audiovisual materials but students are encouraged to interact with it on their commutes. There's also a music playlist consisting of songs relating to the period of history covered by the module. And the pedagogical imperative here is to demonstrate that history is not just something that exists in books as texts, but is also part of our culture and something they've likely engaged with in the past. There's also a movie-style trailer for the module, which is intended to make history seem fun and approachable. Unfortunately, I don't have time to show it to you now. As with so many of us, the pandemic forced a complete rethink of how I teach the course and a redesign for online teaching. While there are many challenges associated with remote teaching, I also found there were some new benefits, primarily in the flipped classroom approach, where the students could watch the recorded lecture at the start of the week, and the live classroom time was then used for discussion and skill-based learning activities. When we returned to the campus last September, I explored how to provide the most inclusive experience in a blended environment. I taught in-person classes, but continued to provide recorded lectures. I released silent slides in advance of the lecture and recorded lecture immediately afterwards. Providing the recording meant there's less pressure on me to make sure it included all the content I wished to. It provided a clean version of the lecture with no interruptions, but it made for a more relaxed classroom environment where there could be interruptions and I could go off on tangents. This blended approach to teaching was an effort to follow UDL principles in providing lecture materials in a mix of media, other course materials in a variety of formats, and striving to provide materials that were accessible and inclusive to all. In another module from my first years, I experimented with offering students more choice with their assessments, allowing them to complete their weekly learning journal task in textual, visual, or audio format. The students responded positively, commenting that it allowed for more creative thinking and better organisation and made the task feel fresh. There are some challenges to expanding these redesigns across a wider range of modules, but the benefit of taking a UDL-informed approach to module design, I think, is evident. Small changes can make a significant difference. This is just one part of it all, and there's so much more that can be done with a UDL+1 approach. Thank you.